Hey, before you start the podcast episode, I just want to lay out a couple terms and conditions that you're going to have to follow in order to watch this show. The first one is go ahead and follow so you never miss another episode of the podcast ever again. The second one is share this episode with a friend who might find value in what I said or what a guest spoke about. And the third one is go ahead, if you haven't already, write a review for the podcast. It's one of the only ways that this podcast gets shown to other people and we get to grow the show organically. And without further ado, let's get you into the next episode of Not Another Podcast. I hope you enjoy. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
Dude, thank you so much for being willing to join me and do this whole thing and provide a little bit of value to me and the audience and stuff like that. I don't want to take too much of your time.
Yeah, man.
But I guess to kind of start off, your name, where you're based out of, and then what line of work you're in, and we'll go from there.
My name's Alexis Cuarezma. I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a commercial and advertising photographer and director.
Gotcha. And when it comes to commercial advertising and photography, I know that you just hosted a class that focused a lot on fitness and stuff like that, those types of people. But then you also do, and the creative stuff, dancers and whatever. Do you also do, what else does commercial photography entail?
What do you mean what else does this entail as far as what aspects?
Aspects, so in your class, I guess, you talked about the creative photography, and then a lot of your stuff had to do with people and stuff, and you shot for HBO and stuff like that. But what exactly, if I wanted to call you up right now and say, hey, I wanted this shoot done, what are the different varieties of shoots that you do, for people, for branding, for product,
so
for...
So I mean, there's basically the three types of photography. There's advertising, advertising and commercial, there's editorial photography, and then there's retail photography.
Okay.
Retail photography is private commissions, high school seniors, weddings, or engagement sessions.
Right.
And then technically there's also a fourth one too, which is fine art.
Right.
Which I don't do much. So I do on occasion I do private commissions where people want me to do that, but other than that it's more shoots for editorial.
Okay.
For magazines or for selling the product, which would be advertising or commercial.
Gotcha. Moment to brag about yourself. What are some of the big companies and names and stuff that you've worked for? I know Mayweather's among them.
Yeah. I mean, a photograph. Thankfully, LeBron James. I've done shoots with Chris Paul. I'm looking up, but I've shot with Nike, HBO, Sports Illustrated, the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team. I shot the U.S. Men's National Soccer Team too as well. And I've been very fortunate to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing this?
16 years.
16 years?
Yeah.
And what was kind of the origin, moving into what you did before and then going into it? Did you start professionally 16 years ago, or did you start dabbling in it 16 years ago to then move into it professionally later?
Well, I kind of started when I was in college shooting, so it kind of just blended together. So in 2005 is when I started really diving in hardcore for it when I was in college, and that's when I started shooting Little League.
Okay.
So I would say that's when kind of really pushed and started to do everything. So.
Yep. And you started shooting, because you talked about that story in your class when you started shooting Little League, and then you just kept on going to the games and treated everything like a big professional shoot, put as much into it as possible. And then when was the first time that when you were doing all of that it kind of turned around and you were oh, people are actually interested in me covering this and doing it more than just outside of your Little League games that you were covering?
I would say a turning point in my career, if you want to call it that. I just I'd like to say that there's no big breaks in your career. You're not going to catch a big break that's going to completely change. But if I were to say it was a big break, it would be in 2011-ish when I got not 2011 when I got into the Eddie Adams workshop. Because that was the first time I ever put my images together for a portfolio.
Gotcha.
And then actually had it reviewed by people from Time Magazine, New York Times, and everyone that goes to that workshop. Gotcha. So that kind of helped me shift from that to more editorial and advertising photography.
Gotcha. And then before, what was the inspiration to start, taking pictures at the Little League games?
It's just what I had access to.
Yeah?
I mean, like I said, like I said before, I was really not the most sociable person ever, because I got into photography because I wanted to do graphic design, and like a lot of the classes just overlapped. And then I was always interested in photography and never took a class in high school because every time I would ask a friend, "Oh, how do you like that class?" We're like, "Oh, it's great, but it's a lot of work. It's a ton of work." So I listened to them and I never took it. And then in college is when I finally did take it because it overlapped a lot with my major. And then once I took it, I absolutely loved it. And then like I just had access to my little bit, obviously family, right? Little league, and then that's how I started shooting that.
That's awesome. Now, do you still do anything in the design area to this day with your degree?
Yeah, I would say not really, not professionally, but like I'm self-publishing my first photo book, and I designed everything.
Gotcha. Okay, so, that's awesome. That's
so technically, yeah, like I'm taking advantage of those. Yeah.
Outside of photography, so like you've got this career, you've been doing it for 16 years, and it's going well. You've got all these different ins. Outside of photography, outside of all the design, outside of all of that, outside of business, what do you do on your off time? Or is there any off time? Or do you use photography to decompress, or do you decompress in other ways? And what are some hobbies and interests outside of your outstanding career?
That's a great question. I do use photography to decompress. That's my personal work. So I use it to just get to know like all the work that I do with the dancers. Like that helps me out. Like literally on Friday, I was just out in San Francisco, and I was meeting with 2 dancers to see if I could add them to that project. So that work's just really personal, and like I said, the only person that I have to answer to is myself.
Right.
When I do that, when you work like that, like the work kind of becomes cathartic, so it just becomes really, really fulfilling on that aspect.
That's awesome.
But to another extent, it's like I try to just go to the gym, go for a walk. I used to go hiking a lot, which I haven't done in a while. But and the other things that I do, I generally try to stay somewhat fit, and do all that. But I mean, that's it that I do. But generally I try to go out and walk every day, go to the gym every day. Not every day, but regularly, at least 5 to 6 times a week.
Nice. Better than I do.
Yeah, I try to do that, and then meet people as much as I can. So
that's cool.
And technically, outside of shooting, speaking, this is not shooting at all and teaching. So
yeah. So you like educating as well?
Yeah, I try to. It's really, to be a good teacher is really hard, but So, but yeah, I enjoy public speaking now. So it's great. Yeah.
That's good. I just had Allison here a little while ago, and she's one of the other speakers that's here, and she said the exact same thing. She said hiking, being outdoors, and just interacting with people, and then educating, like all those different things. It seems to be a pretty common theme among like the photography group. But I wanted to move in something you talked about a lot in the talk that you had the other day. Was you said you were talking about like free work, personal projects, stuff like that, and you're constantly going out there and doing these personal projects where you're finding people and building your different collections and galleries and stuff, and creating this work. At one point you talked about how you stopped looking for outward or external inspiration and started, like, you had so much work that all you had to do was dive back into the previous stuff that you had done. What is your drive to continue to do these free, like free projects, or these personal projects, these inspiration-based projects, and how do you separate and how do you make time for those and also shooting the crazy big stuff that you do professionally?
I would say, because the personal work to me is more something of a legacy that I can leave behind, something that is meaningful to me, because that's work where I'm controlling everything. And I'm choosing everything. I'm choosing who I'm working with, where we shoot it, and how it looks like. So it's work that has meaning to me. So it's almost an extension of me, versus commercial work. There's nothing wrong with it, but at the end of the day, you're making images to try to sell a shoe or a water bottle or insurance.
Sure.
And to me, that work is not really meaningful. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I want to do something that resonates with me, that I could relate to, and that's what on those projects, when, like the one I worked with Christine Shevchenko, like I felt like I connected with her on a personal level. personally and professionally. And then that's what made me drive to LA and work with her. Like I said, 12 hours on the first day, and we did that entire project. And it wasn't that there has to be something more than money for it. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, because you got to look at it both ways. Like, right, like sometimes you're gonna get hired and stuff like that, and then there'll be money and it's great, right? And then other times there'll be no money, right? So that's looking at it kind of the bad side, and you got to find a way to keep going. And then the other way to it is like, okay, let's say you make a bunch of money, right? You still got to keep going, right? At that point, even if you have all the money, what's going to keep you going, right? It has to be something that has to have meaning and gives you a sense of purpose.
I love that.
Right? So that personal work, that why keeps me going is because of that. Like, right? Like a lot of people, they say they burn out, right? You burn out, in my opinion, because you're just doing work that's meaningless and that has no meaning to you, and you're just doing it for money, right? And I didn't become a creative to follow directions to do the same thing over and over again. Because if I did, I would just work in a cubicle all day, right? Yeah. And doing all that. So that's why I'm such an advocate for personal work and doing stuff that at the end of the day only you have to answer to, and you don't need approval from anyone else, right? So when you're doing that and you put it out and people like it, like I said, it becomes cathartic and it's really fulfilling.
That's awesome. I love the way you use legacy in there. Not a lot of people think about that. Like, everybody, wakes up in the morning, goes to a 9-to-5, goes home, either drinks or wastes away or just plays games, doesn't do anything that ultimately they'll be able to look back on their life in 40, 50, 60, 70 years and say, that was a good life. Like, I really, really like the way that you use like legacy as a part of that, like something to create that you can look back and be like, this is everything that I did and I had fun doing it, and every piece meant something to you.
Yeah, to add to that real fast, it's just like I just want my work or my life or anything that I do to hopefully do good, right? And I think a lot of what we do as creatives or artists, if you want to say, it's at the end of the day, it's not really needed, right? Like photography, you could almost say it's a luxury, right? It's not like obviously it's not something that you need like oxygen or like food or water, right? And then all that stuff. But like poetry, music, art, none of that stuff it's required to live. But in my opinion, it's what makes life worth living, and makes you worth getting up in the morning. And my goal for that work is to inspire people, or hope that it inspires people, and as long as it inspires one person, and telling the stories that I resonate with, like with those dancers, like, right, then that's the goal, right? To try to inspire and hopefully try to do good in the world and give someone hope. That's
awesome. I guess to add a little bit of context, you wanna go like into a little 5-minute story or even not even that long, but just a little story to add context to the audience of what you're talking about with the dancers and the personal projects. Like, speak a little bit into that, because that's really interesting. And also, I would be curious to hear, like, what made you pick dancing? And go
that is a good question. I didn't.
And you've also done the boxing, the fitness, and some other avenues as well.
Yeah.
Some other like kind of weirder things. Like you talked about that one girl that makes all the psychedelics pictures and stuff. But I guess what made you choose dancing specifically? And then other avenues, you can tease it how you choose what you like.
It's funny. I hate to say that I didn't really choose dancing. It almost kind of fell on my lap, and it ended up being real well. I've always had an interest in just photographing ballet because I thought it was beautiful, and then I didn't for the longest time. I ended up photographing and meeting a contemporary dancer, which is way different than ballet, in New York, and I did a few shoots with her. Yeah, and then I did another small shoot with some recreational ballet dancers, but it wasn't until I met Christine Shevchenko. She's the principal for American Ballet Theater, where I really just kind of connected with her, and I saw how accomplished she was, and to get her whole like backstory and everything, where I decided to do a project, do a short film with her, and then do a photo shoot.
Yep.
And then having just such a good experience with her, with her work ethic, not only being completely dedicated to the craft of ballet. Basically, like a principal ballet dancer, they're like, it's like making it to the NFL or NBA.
Okay.
So they dedicate their entire lives to doing what they do. And that was the first time that I worked with somebody in my career, that I worked with someone that was at the top of their craft, and that was also equally dedicated to making to doing as good as a work creatively as I was.
That's
so it was really
crazy.
eye-popping experience, really different, because being able to work with someone for 12 hours to do the best work you can, it's way different creatively than working with a well-known athlete and only getting like 10 or 15 minutes with them. You know, or
that's
doing
crazy.
or doing a shoot with them to just sell something. You know what I mean? Which is like
That's
again,
crazy.
they're both. Don't get me wrong, they're both great, and I'm not knocking it from anything anyone that does all their work, but like just working with those dancers, to me, just for me, hits on another level. And if I could find a way to monetize that work, hey, how you doing? To monetize that work, I would just do that work, and that's all I would need to do, because there's so many ideas that I have for personal projects with them. I've always had enough personal shoots or personal work that I want to do, that I don't need a client to tell me what to shoot.
That's awesome. Have you always been doing like the personal projects, like since you like first started, especially with like the Little League and stuff, was obviously like your free work for intro, but then after that, once you started like actually professionally like getting money, and then indulging in your own projects and stuff as
I
well?
would say when I was in school, you got your assignments. I would do those assignments plus my own shoots on the side.
Nice.
And being even professional, that's kind of like what you have to do too all the time. You have to do your client work, and then you also have to do your own work, where anything that excites you, pretty much.
Yep.
Right. And then because if you don't do that, you'll get hired to do the same thing over and over again. You get pigeonholed, and then that's where you could get kind of tired and burned out of doing the same thing over and over again. So you kind of have to keep evolving and keep your own wheel spinning, and doing exploring yourself personally and seeing what you like.
That's what a friend of mine and I were just talking about this. He and I both do photography and video, and he was talking about the same thing, like colorists for video say the exact same thing. They're like, literally, to keep all your skills sharp, just constantly be coloring different stuff, constantly be working on your own personal projects, trying everything out, different looks, just every day, constantly going. I had an experience similar to that. I was in Georgia shooting a music video for 3 days with an artist, and the level of dedication, it was my first time like getting a budget to like hire a bunch of actors, rent out a studio space, rent out different things that actually like cost money, and it was super cool.
Awesome.
And the actors that we found were super crazy dedicated to like giving their best performance. One of them, it was their first time in front of film. Like it was like they were still like brand new to the acting space, and they were incredible. But being able to work with people and being a professional amateur, I'm not like crazy out there, but I'm better than somebody who just bought a camera.
Yeah.
You know, getting to sit there and experiment myself and get to see those people be just as excited about trying new things and trying different shots and trying different emotions and all that stuff. I mean, I get what you're saying when you say like people that are just as dedicated to perfection and perfecting is relative, but perfecting that moment and the different shots in there. I mean, it's just a magical experience above anything else.
Yeah.
But that's super cool. How did dancing just fall in your lap, like you said? Like fall in your lap figuratively, like
like I said, the way I connected with Christine is her boyfriend reached out to me because he saw a behind the scenes video I did for Sports Illustrated cover shoot on YouTube.
Gotcha.
So that's how I got on his radar. And then he's always out there, supporting her. And then he reached out to me. He was like, you should work with her. And then that's when I looked her up, and I'm like, oh, dang, she's like on the top of her game. And I'm like, okay. Normally, to get access to someone like that, like I did, I would normally have to be on assignment for like the New York Times or for a magazine like that. So that's kind of like a blessing for putting yourself out there. Making a behind the scene video and sharing the work and doing everything, which I'm really bad at now because I neglect my YouTube channel. I need to do it more often. But like the more you put yourself out there, the more you could connect with people like that. So that's how it kind of like fell on my lap, and then that experience for her was just like extremely amazing.
That's incredible.
And it was a just like a blessing. And then I wanted to continue that work, and then I ended up working with it wasn't an easy path. After that, I wanted to continue that work, and then when I got back to the Bay Area where I'm at, like I said, I had another dancer reach out to me. And then so I was like, oh, wow, like this is great. It's real easy. Mm-hmm. But then that dancer ended up kind of completely just like, disappearing on me after I had everything planned. So but that's when I said, I was like, no, you know what? The way I look at it is
I love that story that you told.
I'm going to, like, that's fine. Go ahead, disappear on me. But I'll do everything in my power to make you regret. They did that.
Yep.
And then so I ended up
and not in a bad way either.
Yeah.
Like you utilize that experience, and then you find somebody else and you do it amazing, and you produce amazing content, and then that's what the regret is. Not like sending it, not malicious, I think is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, no
malicious.
It's I mean, do whatever you need to do to motivate you, like, right? And that's what I mean. Some athletes, to get motivated and fight someone, they'll invent stories that the opponent said about them, you know what I mean, yep. to get them riled up. And for me, that's kind of my motivation on that aspect. And I'm just so thankful that did happen, because it made me go reach out to other dancers. Like I said, the first two said no to me. They said they couldn't do it, they're busy. They said, but that made way to open way to work with Sasha, which is one of the dancers I worked with, and I still work to this day, and I've done like 10 shoots with her, and she's an absolute awesome. Pleasure to work with. Like the level of just the high level of caliber that Christine had, like Sasha like mashed that, right, and just made her own thing, and like she's an absolute pleasure to work with. And I've done shoots with her for Canon and Light Motion, and I'm thankful that happened, because I look back on it, I could have gone either way. Like, let's say that person wouldn't have disappeared on me, and I worked with them, and that experience with them would have been just okay. I might have just like decided to say, oh, Christine's a one-off, and I shoot ballet anymore, right? So since because that person was at the not the same rank as Christine or Sasha, so that could have happened, very well happened, you know what I mean? But things happen for a reason, and that didn't work out, and I ended up connecting with Sasha, and like she's an absolute dream to work with. That's
incredible, bro. I love that. I want to ask one question, and then I want to move into more of like experiences and logistics and stuff. But, as far as, like, I know you talked about, you kind of vet people, you talk to them, you have a conversation with them, and see what your kind of chemistry is before actually going and working with them. Do you reach out, schedule a meeting, meet with them and talk with them, and then in the situation where, have you run into a situation where you're talking with somebody and you're like, yeah, there's no way we're going to do something? And then how do you approach telling them, like, thanks, we won't be moving forward? Do you treat it like a casting call, an interview, or do you just treat it like a friendly conversation that ends after?
Yeah, I mean, it's a friendly conversation, and then I don't look for anything specific, like for...
Well, it's just chemistry.
For example, like like I said, I was meeting with dancers on this past Friday, and so I set up the availability that they had was from 12:30 to 1, like, right? And then I was thinking, like, oh, dang, that's a long time, it's an hour and a half just to meet with someone, and I'm like, the next meeting I didn't have was till like 1:45, and I'm like, what if that ends early? Then I'm gonna wait there for 90 minutes. The next person, I don't got much to do. But I was like, I go into it, and that 90 minutes, an hour and a half with her just flew by, mm-hmm. Like, right? And just the overall of that, I'm like, okay, that's a good connection. That's a good experience with them. And then after that, I just stay in touch with them. Like, if it doesn't happen, it's not like, it's not like I tell them, oh no, it's not gonna work out. Like, literally, I just don't. When I meet with someone, say, hey, I have a few personal projects I have lined up that I think you might be interested in, or you might be a good fit for.
Gotcha.
I would love to connect and run them by you. You know what I mean? Okay. And like, if we meet and it's just not a good vibe or they're not good for it, I just don't bring up the project. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't need to, like, thank you for meeting me, I appreciate it. You know what I mean? Or you just don't want to burn bridges and just say no, and just say, oh, thank you. I'll consider you for this project. If it opens up, I'll definitely be in touch.
Okay.
And you kind of still want to leave the door open and doing all that, but I mean, that's my approach to it. You know what I mean? You don't want to be like, oh, you know what? Like, no, this didn't work out. This is not, because that's just kind of like, I don't know. Sure. It's just not cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just want to do you don't want to like promise anything and doing all that beforehand. So it's just like you want to meet the person, make sure you connect with them well, and then just see how it goes and then follow up.
Nice. I like that process. Super simple, straightforward.
Yeah.
Throughout everything that you've done, professionally, personal, everything in between, what have been some of your highlight moments and your like any day you would go back and do the same thing again? And as on top of that, what are some of your like, oh shit, never touching that again moments?
For never touching that again, I would just say that would fall into trying to get it into directing a lot. I had a nightmare of a time before with working before with a cinematographer, and then letting them trust in them and putting a lot of trust in them when I could have done a lot of that research, but just like be like, okay, no, you're the cinematographer, so I'll let you take care of that, and let them kind of take point on that, and then that has been like a lot of like one thing that if I could just redo again. So in other words, I would just say inform yourself as much as you can, and don't let somebody else's don't let your decisions be made on don't rely on someone else for making a decision out of ignorance. So for example, what I mean, like if you're directing, like, right, and like you just want to be focused on the writing and everything, like, right, and then I'm saying I'm hiring you as a cinematographer, right, okay, I'll let that all chance to you, I'm trying to make this, like, right, don't like I hate to like I don't want to say don't trust people, but like for example, like, right, if you're doing something like that and I'm like, hey, I'm working on a personal project,
would you say like don't blindly trust people?
Yeah, so I would say like like I have the script, right, I want you to be the DP for it, I got this lined up, all right, cool, like what do we do to get this done, right? In a sense, don't blindly trust someone if the cinematographer says, all right, cool, we need to try and already shoot this, we're gonna need anamorphic lenses, right, we're gonna need this and that and everything, like, right, like you don't need any of that stuff to make a film. That's just like the cinematographer wanting to like you to pull that money so they could play with all that stuff that's expensive.
Exactly.
Right? So I would say that's my biggest well, you said regret moment or things that you could like you do again, like, right? I would say on that, don't blindly trust someone like that. They'll say all that stuff. Because if you do, then like that's like, believe me, that has been horrible for me. Like I wasted a ton of money doing all that on stuff that wasn't needed. Like you don't need to rent like, you know, all that stuff that's not really required to do all that stuff, but and unfortunately, like in my experience, a lot of cinematographers will want to do that stuff and they'll say they'll do that stuff, and you don't need it to create like anything for a client or personal work, you know what I mean? So that's why now like I really dive into being knowledgeable about lenses, cameras, everything, not only still photography but also for cinematography too as well. Sure. So I would say that's the biggest thing for me, and I would just say the highlights for me. Anything that I've done would be, you know, it's nice to have shot some well-known athletes and all that, which is great. Like, you know, Pacquiao, Mayweather, and like LeBron James and all that stuff. But I would say really the true highlight for me would be the personal work I did with Christine. I was going back for that because that was the first shoot that I did with like I said with in ballet. With the well-known ballet dancer, but like the reason why I'm most proud of that shoot is because the photos part of it wasn't really planned at all. It was all done on intuition. Really? It was like an afterthought. Yeah, because great. I was really all my focus was on the short film I made with her and working with Sean, the cinematographer I was working with, and trying to figure out all the lighting and refining the script. Like literally, I put no thought into the photos. I was like, obviously, I was bringing my still camera and bringing lights because I knew I would take photos, but it's not like I said, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this shot, I'm gonna do that shot. It was just like, all right, cool. Today we're gonna do photos and kind of just.
Let's see what we can get.
The entire shoot was done on intuition.
That's awesome.
Right, and doing all that.
I love that.
But with that being said, I did have the luxury of time with her, and we worked like 12 hours that day. Yeah. So that certainly helps, and then her being extremely talented helps. And then I had obviously the experience. So that all is like a good combination where that can work. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that's something that would have been as successful if I did it like 10 years prior, earlier, or anything like that without that experience that I have, you know. So it was like Christine's very knowledgeable in her craft. I'm very knowledgeable in lighting and what I do. Sure. And then we had that tied in with the luxury of time, made it for a good spur of the moment, like, shoot, like, or, you know what I mean, for 12 hours. So that's something that I look back on those images, and I feel like those images kind of are a reflection of my intuition or subconscious, because they were kind of, again, done without like any planning. Like, I didn't wake up that day and say, oh, I'm gonna take a photo like this or a photo like that. We just kind of did it on the spot.
That's awesome. And especially working with a dancer, like I've shot for a dance studio before, and one of the most complicated things was because I wasn't familiar. Like what you mentioned in your talk was, she knows the technique, you know the creative, you need to be able to meet in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
And for her to be able to say, this isn't quite right, let's do it again. I mean, how many hours did you... There was one photo that you showed that you spent how many hours on?
Oh, it was 49 minutes, so it's like about an hour, yeah.
Almost an hour spent just trying to get one photo, like, and that was just her, like, tweaking little parts on herself until she figured out exactly where she needed to be.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That was one of the biggest things I ran into, was I had to sit there with the one of the studio guys that was there, and we had to go through all the pictures, and he was like, great picture, horrible form, move on. I was like, damn, I was happy with that photo too. Okay, like stuff like that. I guess to kind of close out, any whether it's wisdom, it's advice, or any other experience you want to talk about for the sake of a takeaway that might be valuable to somebody that is in a spot that is either above you, below you, or right at your same level, whether professionally or personally, spiritually, whatever you're kind of feeling. Anything that you want to leave that audience with?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would share two full advice. I mean,
please,
one
more
of
the better.
The best advice that I got from Brad Smith, which was the director of photography at Sports Illustrated, when he gave me the first assignment, it was keep it simple, have fun, and don't fuck it up. That was the best, I would say, good advice. And then the second part to that advice, which goes directly to that, is don't listen to anyone. Listen to yourself, because when he told me that and gave me that advice, I didn't listen to him. I didn't keep it simple, and I didn't have fun, and I certainly fucked it up. But not fucked it up to the point where I failed, right? To just summarize that, like he hired me for the first assignment for SI, and he wanted me to keep the lighting real simple. Right, and because it was a basic assignment, just shot on
too creative to not get creative with the light.
Yeah, and then I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do images like that. So, but then I was like, I had shot enough athletes in other magazines before to know that, like, if they tell you have an hour with a talent, you could very well only have 10 minutes. Yep. And then the shot list that I had was like a laundry list of stuff that they needed for that assignment. So I remember kind of feel like I was cornered, and I'm like, man, if I do just what I'm told, he'll be happy with it. I'm like, the athlete will be happy with it, because it was a college athlete. Obviously, they're getting exposure. Yep. If I post this on my social media, everybody will be thrilled for me and saying, oh my God, congrats, you shot for SI, like, right? And then I remember thinking, well, what about me? Like, right? So I kind of felt like I was backed into a corner, and I was like, dang, I don't want to not listen to him. I don't want to waste time doing my own like creative thing. Like, right, and then like not do what I'm told, because then I just blew my opportunity. Right. So I did extra homework on that one, and this is where I didn't keep it simple. And I figured out a way to shoot two lighting setups simultaneously. Oh. So that was a lot of work, a lot of extra research I had to do on top of like researching the assignment and my talent. And then I figured it out and I did it. And then, I mean, like, where part of messed it up is since I was firing off two different shots at the same time, or back to back, or almost at the same time, I blew the breaker in the building, right? So doing all that, so that was really interesting. I mean, luckily the person helping out there knew where the breaker box was, and that could have been really bad. And doing all that, good job. Yeah, and then anyhow, long story long. The thing with that, like when I showed all the photos, the one they published was the one with my look, right? Nice. So that was really satisfying. Nice. So my whole thing is just like, make sure that you're able to do something that you're proud of and that gives you fulfillment to a certain extent. And I know I might kind of contradict myself here, but the other part to that is that when the client hires you and they're paying you money, that's not necessarily the time for you to be an artist and try stuff and do all that. Like, when you're getting paid, a lot of the stuff is just like, it's the client's baby, and your job is to kind of just like deliver whatever they need and get that done, right? If you can, and if it works within the budget, then yeah, like do extra takes or do extra setups and do all that. And if it's something that's really meaningful to you, like, right, for me, like if I get a magazine assignment or if I get the opportunity to work with someone like amazing, and like the budget's only like this amount, and I'm like, dang, I could do something that's great. And if I got extra time, I'll go in my own pocket and like rent an extra setup, and just for the opportunity to try to just do something with that person,
right?
And doing it and do something for yourself, right? Because then you could take that and show it and then leverage that work to show other people, you know, what you're capable of doing. Right. So I would say that, but I would literally say the biggest advice would be don't listen to anyone. Like try to stay in your own lane and focus, because a lot of people will project their when people give advice or they say things, they'll project their flaws onto you, right? So
Gotcha.
or their limitations on you. So don't listen to people. Like I said, I never took a photo course in high school, even though I was interested, because I listened to all my friends who were like, "Oh yeah, it's great, but it's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work," and like so I never took it. Like I wish I never listened to them, and I'd love it. You know what I mean? I worked 12, 14 hours. I've done a 14-hour personal shoot before. Damn. And it's
That's
something that I love doing. You know what I mean? Because like I said, when it's fulfilling or you feel like you're doing something for a purpose, you kind of get pulled towards your goal. So like right, it's crazy until like you end up doing it. So don't look for anyone's approval, and don't be afraid to work really hard, and try to be as respectful as you can.
Perfect.
By doing all that, you know, being an artist, being a creative, to me, I like to say, you know, I'm a lover, but I think the very definition of being that, like a photographer or cinematographer or anything like that, by the very definition, you're already being defiant and almost being a fighter, because you're not doing what society told you to do. You're not being a lawyer or an accountant or anything like that. You're doing something that's not a normal occupation. You know, there's a lot of, like Christine said on that script, you know, that we did, it's something so foreign to them, and so not normal to them, that they try to talk you out of it, right? But you kind of got to go all in, right? And if it works, right, then you're a genius. And if it doesn't work, right, then at least you tried it. And I think that like Benicio del Toro says, if you tried, like even if you did it on your own terms and you failed, that's actually true success, right? As long as you get to do it on your turn. Because the other way around, like, right, succeeding and compromising your integrity or your sincerity, that's ultimate failure. You know what I mean? That's a lot of like I told you, like an SI assignment, I'm like, cool, if I would have just listened and do what I'm told, like I wouldn't have been proud of that assignment. That would have been on my name would have been on it, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Right. I'm like and I said, like Brad would have been happy with it, the magazine would have been happy, the editors, the talent, and like all my friends would have been thrilled for me, and internally I would have been miserable. And that's ultimate failure, like, right? But that how I didn't keep it simple and I made it complicated. Had that blown up on my face, which it almost did, right? I would have been okay with that, because I was like, look, I failed on my terms and I tried my best, and I did it, and I left no stone unturned. So I think that's what people need to try to do their best to do.
That's brilliant, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all your time.
Yeah, no, of course, man. Whatever you need, dude.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Not Another Podcast. Just like I said in the beginning, I would greatly appreciate it if you would go write us a review, follow the podcast so you never miss another episode, and share this with one friend who might find value in what I or a guest said during the show. Rob Dial always says, make it your mission to make somebody else's day better. And that quote, ever since I started listening to his podcast, has really changed my thinking as far as how I go about my daily life. So, with that being said, I'm going to leave you the way that Rob Dial leaves you every single episode. Make it your mission to make somebody else's day better, and I hope that you guys have an amazing day.